Hey, what's up, guys? This is IFM for the POSimulator YouTube channel, and I got another Wi-Fi OU battle right here between Horsepower and Fork It Over. Now, this match is a standard Rain team versus the standard Stand team. You got a Fork It Over with the Politoed, Ferrothorn, Jirachi, Tentacruel, Rotom-W, Gliscor team versus the Horsepower team of Landorus, Tyranitar, Rotom-W, Mamoswine, Latios, and Caesar. So let's get this battle off. Fork It Over just going to lead with his Politoed to get the rain up, and Horsepower goes for the Rotom-W, the standard lead against a Sand team. A Rain team. So he's going to go for the Volt Switch, and Fork It Over switches into his Ferrothorn right here and absorbs the Volt Switch quite well. But this gives Horsepower a chance to send out his Tyranitar onto Ferrothorn. So Tyranitar can do a couple things right here, but he's ended up going to go for the Stealth Rock, as Fork It Over also goes for the Stealth Rock. So both sides have been rocked, but Fork It Over does have his Spinner and Tentacruel that he can get rid of those if need be. So Politoed is going to come in here on Tyranitar and absorb the Fire Blast and recover a little bit with the leftovers, giving us a bit of a clue about his team. Obviously, it's a defensive Politoed, so he's going to go for the Scald here, and gets a pretty key burn on Rotom-W, because now every time Rotom switches in, that's going to be the 12.5% damage from the Stealth Rock plus any burn damage he's might take. But Rotom-W ends up being the Rest Chesto set, one that Snooch popularized in the Smogon tournament final against Peachy. So gets the rest off and is going to just go for another Volt Switch right here on Ferrothorn. So we're going to get the same cycle again. Tyranitar in on Ferrothorn, and the Sand is back up on the playfield right now. So, Tyranitar here against the Ferrothorn. He's going to Fork It Over, is going to switch out to his Politoed and switch right into a Crunch right there. So that's a solid 26% damage, and Politoed's down to 66%. So another Rotom-W switch in right here, and he goes into another Scald. And no JCP this time. Scald does it standard, but no burn, so gives Rotom-W a chance to go for another Volt Switch right here on Politoed, and goes to the Protect, so he's back up to 79% health with those leftovers. So Ferrothorn switch in, and Rotom-W just goes for the Volt Switch right here. Switches out of that Ferrothorn back into Tyranitar, so the same cycle continues for the third round. Tyranitar against Ferrothorn this time. Going to go for the Crunch, and this time Fork It Over predicts the Crunch and is able to get a Gyro Ball off, take out 25% of Tyranitar's health with really no harm to himself. Ferrothorn only doing about 6% after leftovers. And Politoed comes back in on Tyranitar, comes right into a Fire Blast, and is able to just recover off all the damage from the Fire Blast with the leftovers and get himself in a pretty good situation as Rotom-W comes right back in and into a Scald there. And once again, no JCP, so he's only 1 for 3 with those Scald burns, and he's going to go for a Protect to get back his health up again. So just like before, up to 79% health, and Rotom-W shows the Volt Switch right there. And once again, as the Ferrothorn switches back into the playing field, going to go for a second Volt Switch, but this time he gets a critical hit. It's going to take out 23%, and finally the cycle breaks with the Caesar switch in, because thanks to that Volt Switch critical hit, he's able to KO with the U-turn, but instead Fork It Over decides that his Ferrothorn is going to be needed for the rest of the game, and sends on his Tentacruel there to absorb the U-turn, as Landorus comes in to take on the Tentacruel. So Rotom-W comes into, he basically walls Landorus, and he switches right into a U-turn right there. So Rotom-W versus the Latios on the playing field right now. Latios switches back. He's scouting for the Volt Switch, scouting for the Scarf Rotom-W, but due to Fork It Over switching out there, you can tell that it probably wasn't a Scarf set. So Landorus gets a free turn. He's going to go for the Earthquake, and this time the Earthquake doesn't work, as the predicted the Gliscor switch in comes in. He's going to go for another Earthquake as Gliscor uses Protect. Now this is when you would expect some kind of maybe Hidden Power Ice to be shown, but no, he goes for a third Earthquake, and Fork It Over gets caught in a over prediction right there, and another Earthquake is par for the course. Now this would be the perfect time to whip out the Expert Belt HP Ice, as the Gliscor comes right back in, but another Earthquake is shown, and it's looking that like this Landorus might not be of the Expert Belt variety, but right as you think that, he goes for the Hidden Power Ice, and Gliscor goes down, perfectly baiting the Gliscor out there. So now Gliscor's out of the way, and Landorus doesn't really have much in its way, except for this Rotom-W. So Rotom-W comes out, and Latios comes in to absorb the Volt Switch. Latios goes out as Jirachi comes in, and Scizor is back on the field. But a U-turn critical hit from Jirachi is going to take Scizor down to 51% health, and Tentacruel is going to get a chance to come out onto the playing field and show its muscle and probably get a rapid spin off. We're going to see what happens though. And Rotom-W comes in, and yes, it's going to be a rapid spin from that Tentacruel, and this might be Rotom-W's last time on the playing field, depending on how the situation turns out. But a nice Volt Switch here as Ferrothorn comes in, and Scizor is back out on the field. Like I said earlier, he's at the level where the U-turn is going to KO, so Tentacruel is forced to come out to absorb the U-turn. And this gives Horsepower a chance to get his Mamoswine showing his muscle out there on the turf. So Mamoswine in against Tentacruel, and Rotom-W is forced to come in, and he's really scared of that Earthquake right now. Doesn't want to lose his spinner and his Toxic Spikes layer in Tentacruel. So Latios in on Rotom-W once again. Hydro Pump here, and looking at the damage, a 33% plus those leftovers, so it's probably some kind of maybe defensive set. He only did 30% with the rain, which actually isn't that much. So Jirachi in on Latios and absorbs the Draco Meteor quite well. Here probably going to be some kind of defensive set, so he does the U-turn on the Latios, and Latios goes down. So now Horsepower has pretty much lost his Rotom-W check, but at the same time, Fork It Over really doesn't have much for the Mamoswine out there except for Rotom-W, and gets the key superpower in on Rotom-W. Now, this might not be key for Mamoswine and the way Mamoswine is concerned, but it's basically going to allow for both of the ground Pokemon of Horsepower to do a lot of damage right here to Fork It Over's team, because you have Landorus out there that are able to spew off his Earthquakes, and now that Fork It Over's 2 ground resist are out of commission, there isn't much he can do. So Landorus in here on Jirachi, gonna the Scarf Jirachi actually, and he gets flinched. So Flinch Jirachi, a set that I actually popularized, is really proving its mettle out there, and he takes out Landorus. A pretty surprising move there actually from Horsepower, because Landorus was one of its real keys to the match, but thankfully he doesn't get that second flinch for Horsepower, and the superpower is able to take out Jirachi. So now we're getting into the real key parts of the match here. Tentacruel is able to set up a substitute on Scizor, and the superpower isn't able to break the substitute, and now Mamoswine isn't able to come in and just sweep through that Tentacruel because he's got a substitute up and he can KO it with Scald. So now that the Scizor goes down to that Scald, he's forced to send in Tyranitar to try to just manage to break Tentacruel substitute, and the Scald is going to go on to Tyranitar and do 19% damage, but the Earthquake takes the substitute out, and now because of the Scald damage, Tyranitar is going to die thanks to that burn. So Mamoswine in on Tentacruel, he's going to go for the Earthquake, going to go and take down Tentacruel, 80% damage, but the Life Orb is key there on Mamoswine. So now Politoed's in. I'm going to go for the Protect, and I see how many Protects he can switch, get out, and Earthquake goes out on Politoed, 45% damage. And the second Earthquake also does 45% damage, and Politoed goes down. And now it's just all up to Ferrothorn right here. How much is Earthquake going to do? It's going to do 42%, and Horsepower barely hangs on. Mamoswine with 12% damage. A really, really close match. There wasn't really anything Fork It Over could do at the end. Wonderfully played by Horsepower, and well done on all sides. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe. This has been IFM for the POSimulator YouTube channel. Please check out more of our videos. Out.